I think most of you know, she's been at MSU for 20 years.
Almost 20.
Almost 20, starting
in middle school.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. In 95.
20, that's 20 years.
Right.
And she's had a variety of hats here. She started out working in Ag Extension, and then she worked for the Publications and Graphics Department, and she's responsible for the logo, the new logo, which isn't new anymore, but the change in logo. And then she's been at Extended University since 2008, where she's been working with the various EPSCoR groups, part of the Extended University EPSCoR team with Jamie, trying to provide outreach product. But another amazing thing Suzi does is she's part of the Girl STEM Collaborative, which goes around the state, and it's a network that tries to inform girls about STEM opportunities and careers of study. So that's really been successful and really a great program. She's spoken a lot on science communication, and she's going to do that with us today, and she's got a challenge for us and rewards, which is all about good teaching. So there we go.
All right, thanks Kathy, and thanks everybody for being here today. I did want to say a real quick word. You see my long titles here. I am with Extended University. This classroom is part of Extended University. We're an academic outreach arm of the university. We do online education, we do educational technologies, we do continuing education, professional development. But what I love the most is working with researchers who get grants and work with us to help establish some public outreach role that we have working with EPSCoR and the Institute on Ecosystems. And I just want to say a quick word too, again, about why I love working with IOE and EPSCoR. I see EPSCoR as a capacity building organization. Its real purpose is to build infrastructure and talent and grow collaboration. And I think that's why we're all here today, to grow what we do and find new people to work with. And then the IOE has been fascinating because there's so many disciplines represented. I've met a lot of new people, and it's been fun to work with everybody. So thanks for being here today. We'll go and get started. What I wanted to start with is tell you what this talk is not. So this talk is not going to turn you into Bill Nye the Science Guy. We just don't have enough time. Tony's leaving, I'm sorry. Tony's already on it. We have only an hour, so we're not going to develop super deep understanding. We're going to kind of stay at the top level and then maybe think about where we want to go deeper. And then lastly, it's not 30 minutes, it's actually 60 minutes. That's our rough cut talk. So we'll spend about 30 minutes looking at 30 strategies. Jamie Cornish, my colleague, is going to talk about some new changes in NSF grant proposal guidelines. And then we'll take a little bit of time at the end to share some of your own strategies and maybe even work on something. If you have an idea that you want to throw out to the group, we can talk about that together. So I'm interested, how many of you read deep enough into the talk description to know that there's a prize to be given away? Ooh, I was considering maybe just opening it to only the people who know what the prize is. But I think we're going to let everybody be in on the prize. So basically what we offered, and Jamie, maybe you want to pass the slips around. You can write your name on the slip. We will give the prize away at the end of the talk. But what the prize is, some lucky person will win, I think we called it a communications and outreach package. And basically what that is we'll work closely with you to develop a really cool graphic, an infographic or a visualization. We'll help you write a story that can go on the IOE website or somewhere else of your choosing. And then we'll do a one-on-one consultation with you if you're planning an outreach strategy or working on a grant. So that will be the prize that we give away at the end of the day. All right, so I kind of talked about what the talk is not. Let me tell you what the talk is. Basically, I want to open your eyes to some new ways of thinking. I want to get your wheels turning, and then I want you to think out of the box. So I'm basically going to throw a lot of ideas and strategies at you. Some of these you'll be familiar with, some will be new to you, some you'll immediately zero in on, some you might have to think about. But I hope that you consider each one and kind of think about how it might apply to what you're doing. And then maybe at the end, think about one you really want to do, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about how you can take that to the next level. By the way, this is a prototype of the infographics that we're working on, so that's what you would win if you are the lucky winner of the prize today. All right, so let's communicate about science. I want to start with a graphic that is the most boring graphic of the presentation, but I think it's really important. This is one that was developed by the Space Science Institute, and basically what they're showing here on this spectrum is that there really is a spectrum of education, outreach, and communication. So basically at the far end where it's red, they're thinking about schools where you're with somebody day in, day out. You have very deep content, lots of learning objectives. It's very easy to evaluate. Then you kind of move into this yellow spectrum of informal education. Maybe you're involved in a camp or some program that goes a little longer, but it's not quite as deep as school. Then in public outreach, so you go to a topic in a sense. And you give you some content, but not quite as much. And then at the far end is this mass communication, and that's basically where we're going to live today. What I see the value here is that there's great capacity to reach large audiences quickly. Now, you may not get the kind of deep content that you get in school, but this is often where you really hook people with your science. Sometimes you have to just really get them interested and engaged in what you're doing, and then you can move them down this spectrum and do some deeper learning. So I just want to let you know that's kind of where we're operating today. All right, so let's get started. I've grouped these into a couple categories. The first one I'm going to call working the crowd, because this is where we basically draw upon the people who are stakeholders and get info and data from them. And Erica, Groot, I'm so happy you're here because our first topic is citizen science. I think this is one that's pretty well known to people. This is where basically we're asking people to gather data or observations. We gather those together, and as researchers, we can actually use that data for our projects. Along the way, there's the capacity for the people who are doing the project to learn as well. On the right-hand side here, that's actually Erica. She's in the back. She studies elk scat, and so she set up a citizen science project where people would go to the Paradise Valley, help her collect elk scat, which she would have had to do on her own, and then Erica has more scat than she would have had, and the people have the experience of learning about what she does. So that's something that can be pretty easily set up. We'd be happy to talk to you about that if you want to do that. On the left is Nest Watch. A lot of the citizen science projects focus on birds, and if you do a Google, you'll find a lot of people who are interested in and observing birds. Okay, next, this is one I wanted to throw out there, art contest or photo contest. This is another great way to get people involved. Tell people that you're studying pine beetle and you're looking for your photos of where you see pine beetle kill around Montana. You could collect all these photos, you could put them on a website, people start being involved, and then other people can see the collection. Likewise, you could do an art contest. A lot of these are for kids, but not all. And again, you're kind of presenting a topic, people are sharing their art, then you have the collection and you can share that back with other people.
Is this part of informal education, these things you're telling us?
I would really, Kathy asked if this is part of informal education. I would actually call most of these kind of on the far end of that spectrum of communications. For instance, when somebody was working with Erica, I would say they're getting a deeper understanding than somebody who just reads an article in the newspaper. But most of the stuff I'm talking about today is stuff that you can kind of do fairly quickly to get people interested and then take them into the next level. So this is one that I'm really interested in. I call it Share Your Story. And again, it's kind of like asking people to share their photos or their art. They're sharing their own stories. This is a site that has people talk about vaccine preventable diseases. So basically, what happened to me because I wasn't vaccinated. This website gives people storytelling tools, kind of helps them map out their story, and then gives a place where they can share those stories back. This is another one that I really like. It's the Moss podcast. Does anybody listen to the Moss? So there's actually, this is a podcast that's very popular where people tell their stories. There's a tool online where you can go and you can actually just hit a button and record your story and upload it to the Moss. So imagine if we were asking people to tell their stories about climate change or land use or how I feel about this or that or the other. We could collect these stories and then people are involved and we can share those stories back out. Okay, this is another strategy that I would really like to do. This is based on a group out of Portland, Oregon. They're called the Institute for Science, Engineering, and Public Policy. They bring in some pretty heavy hitters for science talks. You actually pay to go to these talks. But what I really like is that they've set, their web design could use a little work. I know you can't see all of this. But basically, ahead of time, they presented the study guide so that people could have a glossary of terms. There are links to short blogs and videos. There's some case studies and background. And I was thinking, how cool would it be if whenever you go out and give a talk, you're actually presenting people ahead of time with some information they can come in with and then apply that to the talk as you give the talk. Next strategy, online book club. Book clubs are very popular. I've thought how great it would be to do an online book club. And this is a way where people, say, all across the state of Montana could be reading the same book at the same time, perhaps with a facilitator, maybe one of you, and you are sharing comments about the book back out to the audience, and they can use social media tools to share their comments back to you. There is actually a website called onlinebookclub.org. I would probably pick a different structure. We could even use Twitter, and I've put an example down here of a university that's doing that. But one idea I had this fall, have you heard who the convocation speaker is? It's Rebecca Skloot. She's the author of The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It's a really great book. And I thought we encourage everybody in Bozeman to read that book at one time, but what if we encouraged everybody in Montana to read the book at one time, and then actually had somebody facilitating a discussion about the book, and people wherever you live could be participating in that book discussion. Okay, this next section I want to call partnerships. We all work in partnerships all the time. Again, I want you to think a little bit outside of the box on some of the partnerships that we could make to help people understand the science and the research that you're doing. One that's very intriguing is partnering with people who produce food and beverages. On the left is Haagen-Dazs. Michelle Flanagan actually told me about this partnership in which Haagen-Dazs really has a vested interest in the health of bees, not only for honey, but also for some of the crops that bees pollinate, like almonds and fruits. And so Haagen-Dazs did a big campaign to help people understand more about the science of bees. On the right is our local Wheat Montana. They have a pretty extensive story on the back. Maybe somebody could partner with Wheat Montana, think of the connection between what we're doing in environmental science and link that back to what they're doing in agriculture. There's probably all sorts of other food partnerships you could think about locally. Again, not maybe on the scale of Haagen-Dazs, but somebody locally who's producing a product. Then, of course, there's the beverage industry. Dogfish Head Brewery made a Pangea Ale. We were joking one time at a staff meeting that we'd love to get our local brewery to make the IOE IPA, right? Wouldn't that be great if we could make a beer that actually shares some science content with people? I know they don't bottle their beer, but maybe there's a story that could go along with that and help people understand what we're up to while they're out having the after-work beverage. Okay, kind of along that line, host a themed dinner or event. On the right-hand side, this is the Bug Buffet. Has anyone been to the Bug Buffet here on campus? Have you heard of the Bug Buffet?
When is it this year?
I think it's coming up. It's usually in the springtime. Do you know when it is?
No, but it's always in the paper the day after it happens.
Okay, it's in the paper the day.
I'm looking for it.
Okay, they need some science communication strategies, right? Okay.
Florence Dunkel.
Yeah, Florence Dunkel is the professor who runs the Bug Buffet. She's a big advocate of insects as a high-protein food, economical, and so she hosts a Bug Buffet where people come in and actually sample insects as food. On the left, these are some of our friends with the Thermal Biology Institute. They hosted a microbial meal, so every product that they're presenting has an origin or connection to microbes. So they've got yogurt, sauerkraut, pickles, not quite as fancy maybe as the Bug Buffet, but it helps people think about where your food comes from and what's its connections there. Okay, there's a great opportunity to partner with local restaurants. You could do a placemat. This is one that the USGS did that helps kids understand the water cycle. There's a table tent over there. Maybe we could get a table tent in Columbus that talks about some science content that ties back to the university. I bet all of us here know somebody who owns or works in or has a relationship with a restaurant in town. Let's think about how we could get some of our science out into those places where people are kind of hanging out and having fun. Likewise, we could partner with local businesses. On the left there, that's my water bill that came from the city of Bozeman, and they have inserted the water quality report for the city of Bozeman. Could we partner with somebody else to put some of our content in with something they're mailing already? I got a bill from Kenyon Noble, the hardware store, and they had a slip in there for a nonprofit event that was coming up. They're mailing anyway. Could we put something in there that reaches a new audience who might not know about us? Likewise, on the right is the Bozeman Deaconess Hospital newsletter. Does anyone get that at home? I think there's probably a lot of connections between what we're doing and health. Maybe there's a way we could partner with this newsletter and get some of our content into, again, something they're sending out to a diverse audience anyway. All right, this next section I call Techy. It's a little more high-tech based here, and I'm going to start with one of my favorites, which is geocaching. Are there any geocachers in the room? Okay. You can tell me later if you're afraid to say anything about it. So basically, geocaching is what they call a high-tech scavenger hunt. You use a GPS or sometimes now an iPhone to find packages that people have hidden all over the world and posted the GPS coordinates online. So they're out in the forest, they're here on campus. Have you guys heard about this? Okay, but you just maybe haven't done it yet. Okay, well, I will go geocaching with anyone who wants to go.
Geocaching Hawaii.
Yes, Todd and I went geocaching. Kim went geocaching with me. I made Jamie go geocaching. Well, what I love about geocaching is that you're reaching an audience that's pretty computer savvy. I think they tend to be scientific. Geocaches are naturally outdoors, so a lot of people are kind of oriented toward nature. But what you can do, and they've done this over at U of M, I apologize because you probably won't be able to read the text, but basically this is a group called Math Counts. It's a middle school mathematics competition, and what they've done, they've hidden 4 geocaches on the U of M campus, and they're making you solve a math problem to get the GPS coordinates to find that treasure. So what could we do here on our campus to present what we're doing in a mathematical way so that people will seek us out, come and solve that problem, and then go find this treasure? I'll read you real quickly this second one here. Let's see. The forest contains 15 elk, of which 5 are captured, tagged, and then released. A certain time later, 4 of the 15 elk are captured. Assuming that elk are captured independently of one another and that each elk has the same chance of being captured, what is the probability that exactly 2 of these 4 elk have been tagged? So you express your answer as a fraction. That becomes part of the GPS coordinate, and that helps you go find the treasure. So I hope someone will volunteer to do this because I'm in. Okay, kind of along that line is Mundi. Anybody done Mundi before? It's also like geocaching, but you don't go find a treasure. It's based on QR codes. You download an app to your phone, and basically they are also all over the place. You might start to see them now. People stick them on the backs of signs and on light posts, and when you have your phone, you just zap it basically, and it uploads credits to your account that you found that Mundi. There's a zillion of them over by Bridger Brewing, so I think we can combine some of these strategies together. But yeah, we'll take a little tour and go Mundiing and geocaching. But what's cool about Mundi is that people have been using it at events. One example was the National Wild Turkey Federation. It's a giant national conference. And so they put these Mundis throughout their event, and then people were encouraged to go visit different parts of this place to get those Mundis. And then I guess there was one meeting where they actually put them on people, and so you would go meet people so that you could zap them and get your Mundi credit. So I think it's a neat way to get people moving around a place that they might not have visited before. Okay, cameras, this one almost goes without saying, but I just want to put it in there to remind you that photos are so important, and there's so many ways to get them. The new iPhone now has the speed up and slow down video, which is really great. You can get these teeny tiny cameras for your birdhouse. The one in the upper right is the barn cam. It's made for farmers who want to see whether their animals are having babies in the middle of the night. And then even now you can get an infrared camera that attaches to your iPhone. This is pretty cutting edge. I think it's about $300 now. Is that right, Jamie? Yeah, but I mean, pretty soon they'll be $100, and then they'll be $50, and we can be taking these kind of photos wherever we go. And then, of course, there's the GoPro, right? Anybody have a GoPro? Okay, well, think about wearing it next time you go out and do your research. We'll upload that video to the IOE website, and then people can see where you do and what you do. Yeah, there you go, the selfie stick. Okay, this next one I call squeezing in, because I think there's a way for us to squeeze some science content into places where it doesn't currently live. One of the ones that has come in mind for me, I call it science on a school bus. Kids in Montana spent a lot of time on a school bus, not here in Bozeman, but in some of these rural communities. Is anybody here from rural Montana? Nobody? What town are you from?
Outside Clancy.
Okay, did you have to ride the bus to school? You spend a lot of time on the bus, right? And if you're on a sports team, you really spend a lot of time on the bus. I don't want to torture kids while they're on the volleyball bus, right? But maybe there's a way that we can include some videos or even a scientist talk or something that we can share to people who are on their way somewhere in Montana and maybe really interested in learning about what they see outside the window. Here's another one. I really, really want to do this, so I'm hoping for a volunteer at the end of today's session. This is a math paper that my son brought home from Bozeman School. He's in 3rd grade, and he brings home these problems that they're great. They're word problems, story problems, but one of them was about lemonade. You know, if you're making a double batch of lemonade and you need 8 lemons and 2 pounds of sugar, how do you double it? Well, I would rather have him doing a story problem about an IOE researcher goes to Paradise Valley and picks up 4 bags of scat, and then the next day she picks up 3 bags of scat. You know, I just think these guys are pulling up content from Georgia. Georgia's way ahead of the curve on the next generation science standards. So what if we could get our science and math problems into the hands of kids, and they're bringing home our science instead of just kind of made up problems? I really want to do this, so if somebody's in, let me know at the end of the session. Okay, this next one, I want to really think about all the people who come to Montana, our visitors and tourists, or tourons, as we used to call them where I worked in Glacier Park. Walking tour. This is something they offer in Denmark. You can go online, you can download a audio file, and you listen to it as you walk around. I think this one's the harbor. So basically you listen to this talk, you walk around, and you learn about that place. We could do it for MSU, we could do it for one of your research sites. There's all kinds of potential there. This is a different sort of walking tour. They do this in San Francisco. It's the science of bread and cheese. So they visit bakeries, they visit cheesemakers, and they talk about the science of bread and cheese. I know this group also has a running podcast, so I don't know how you keep pace with that, but it'd be interesting. If someone goes to Denmark, you'll have to report back. Likewise, bicycling tour. Anybody know Venture Cycling Association? They're based in Missoula. They're the preeminent cycling organization in the country, and they're right next door to us. They do all kinds of cool tours all over the country. What if we were partnering with them when they do a tour from Glacier to Yellowstone, and we were helping them infuse some science content when they're passing sites where we're doing research or places where environmental science is going on? I think they'd be fantastic partners. I think they would love this kind of content. So something we could really be looking at. Another is the theme touring maps. On the left is the birding map of Montana. On the right is roadside geology. There's the Montana Dinosaur Trail. These are maps that visitors pick up when they come to visit Montana, and they'll go around the state looking at these sites. We could have a map of IOE research sites, or pine beetle kill sites, or places where something is happening that people will pick up this map and deliberately visit these places and learn about it. Driving tour, along these same lines. This is one that's available on iTunes. You can download it and use it in Yellowstone Park. You listen in your car as you're driving around this place and learn more about what's happening in Yellowstone. This is one I saw when we were in Hawaii, actually. Again, you can download this. I think this one actually interfaces with your car's GPS, so it knows exactly where you are and is telling you about that site as you drive. I think it'd be great to do one for the I-90 corridor. You know, you download it when you cross over from North Dakota, or South Dakota, Wyoming. You download it, and you listen to it as you cross Montana, and you learn about what's happening in Montana as you pass certain places. I've also seen, I don't know if this is even possible, well, Rob would know, you know when you pass, I think when you go into Yellowstone, you can turn your radio to a certain frequency and learn about, usually it's road construction, but maybe you could do that for another site that you're passing, tune your radio to, that's possible, right?
Yeah, low power FM.
Okay, we just need FCC approval, or, okay, you're on that committee. Okay, no. All right, graphic wraps. You guys have probably seen these around Bozeman. The one on the left is at the library, the one on the right is downtown. Basically, they're taking graphics and putting them on these electrical boxes and other just kind of ugly places. What if we had science content on those instead? Plant identification or animal identification, biology. It would probably take some investment from us to buy those, but maybe not. Maybe they're just looking for art and cool content, and they would be happy to wrap a box in IOE science content. You can also wrap a urinal, apparently. I don't want to be on that committee, but if you want to go for it. Okay, public art and signage. In Maine, there's a popular trail, you can see it here on the right in Google Maps, that's near the ocean. And they've set up art and signs to help people understand what would happen if the sea level rose to that point. Then they also set it up on Google Maps, so you don't even have to go there and click on each of these points and learn about it. You can also contribute your own photos at different times when the tide is in or out, and that becomes part of a big collection. On the bottom right, this woman in Miami takes one of those things that you use to chalk the baseball field lines, and she draws a line in Miami of where the ocean would come if the sea level rises so much. I also saw a picture, there was an art installation, I think in Oregon, same kind of thing. They took a light post and they put art, it was wasn't it starfish and coral and stuff?
Marine stuff, yeah.
Yeah, to show someday the ocean might be here. Okay, we don't have rising ocean in Montana, but we did talk to Jeff Poole, who's interested in kind of redefining the way we think about rivers as not just the channel with the water in it, but the entire floodplain. Well, what if you put a sign out here in the boonies where people don't think about that's part of the river? It is, because it's part of that floodplain. Okay, I want to tap into a couple of the hot trends that are happening and see if we can infuse some science communications. One of these is one that I love personally, the whole wearable fitness. Anybody wear a Fitbit or Jawbone or anything like that? Lindsay, okay. Nobody got their free Fitbit from MSU Wellness? Okay, well, this right here is a graphic. I went in with a group of Yellowstone researchers this summer into Heart Lake. And so this is a visualization of my hike into Heart Lake. Now, there's probably not deep content here, but you could actually draw out this visualization and show different points along the trail where we stopped, we looked, we sampled, and it gets people thinking about something that they might be doing in their own life and then how it applies to what you do in your research. So imagine if you were wearing a trackable device while you're out going to a research site or even moving around your lab. Like, what does that show you about what you do, and how can you get people thinking about it? So kind of along that same line, this is a photo of my arm after that hike. I put this in here only because I had so many mosquito bites. It was like nothing I've ever seen before. But Jamie used this photo in a Yellowstone curriculum guide that she's made for middle school students, and apparently it's attracting a lot of attention. People notice the arm. So I guess my lesson here, it's okay to put your personal story into the research that you're doing, and especially those of you who are working outdoors. I mean, talk about what's happening to you, take pictures, you know, show your dusty boots and the gear that you bring out there. People want to hear those kind of stories. I hope you don't come back like that. It was miserable. Okay, here's another one, Minecraft. Anybody have kids who do Minecraft? Like, are they obsessed with Minecraft? Yeah, so this is an online, it's kind of like online Legos almost. You can get it on an Xbox, you can get it on the iPad, but students build things. I mean, if our architecture students submitted this as their portfolio 10 years ago, it would have been amazing. So now people are creating all kinds of STEM lessons that go along with Minecraft. Could we tap into that? Could we somehow put out an activity that a kid could do in Minecraft that ties back to something you're doing? Could they construct a trail or a tower or something that you do in this game? Okay, I want somebody to do this too. Create an audio playlist of your research. So basically it's just a collection of songs that defines what you do. And you can interpret that however you want, but I think it gets people thinking about what you do and how that presents in an audio way. Okay, tile. Does anybody have a tile? I'll show you what this is. Do you have one of these?
No, I've just seen it everywhere and have no idea what it is.
Okay, here's what it is.
Yeah.
It's basically a geolocator device. I put it in my wallet, and if I lose my wallet, I can use an app on my cell phone to find it. So the app will tell me how close I am to it, and then it actually makes music. So if you're looking for your wallet in your house, you'll hear it tinkling, and you can go to it, and then the phone vibrates when you're right next to it. So I'm just trying to think, how could we apply this, say, in a classroom or a camp, where students could think about, okay, what do researchers find, and how am I finding something using technology? I think there's a way, because it's so brand new, nobody has created any science educational content to go with it, so we should do that. Okay, now this is our last section, and I want to leave you, some of these were pretty speculative. I mean, if you're going to make a lesson plan for Minecraft or go do a driving tour podcast, it would take a little bit of work. But these are some things that are going on right now. Any of you can tap into these. So one of these is called the Teen Science Cafe Network. This is a national network. We've established a relationship with them over the past few years. Jamie Cornish just came back from a national conference. And basically the idea, you've probably heard of a science cafe. This is one that's kind of built and run by teenagers learning from a scientist. We had the opportunity to get some mini grant money from this organization to host some science cafes in Bozeman and around the state. We would need somebody who's interested in working with teenagers and telling them about your science, and we can probably get some funding for you to set something up like that. It's very teen driven. They really want the teens to work with you and kind of tailor your talk for teenagers. So, you know, it's not for the faint of heart, but I think it would be really excellent feedback for you if that's something you want to do. Classroom Pen Pals. This is something we started up just a little bit last fall. We were thinking, how great would it be, especially for some of these rural schools away from Montana or from Bozeman, to have a relationship with a researcher. It doesn't have to be literally letters. It could be emails. It could be Skype. Maybe you're presenting a project to the class that they can work on and then report back to you. But you have a continued relationship with this group and really check in with them and possibly do some science and research together. And we can help you get set up with that too. Online course and module. There's all levels of ways you can put content into something online that people can learn from. On the right is NTEN, that's the National Teachers Enhancement Network. That's a program run out of Extended University. We offer online courses for science teachers. So they're pretty rigorous content, but we've served over 20,000 teachers all around the world. So if you want to teach an NTEN course, if you want to teach what you know to science teachers, we can help you do that. These other two, TED Ed and Nearpod, are some apps online that help you develop much shorter interactive content. So you can put a video and then make a quiz to go along with it, or text that has some photos and put those out there for other people to learn from. Another thing you can do, this is one we did for the NASA astrobiology group. This is a pretty deep content online module for teachers, but it's not instructor-led. So somebody can go online, they can read this content, they can do quizzes, there's links to activities that they can bring into their classroom. And then you can turn it into an iBook. We use the iBook authoring software to take that course, turn it into an iBook that's available free on iTunes. Somebody can download it, the videos are there, the photos are there, and everything is hyperlinked. And it's free, and people search for that kind of content. This is another that you could do. Science Fair Mentor or Schools Mentor. The Science Fair is based out of the U of M. Every year, they find kids who are looking for a project to do. What if you presented a project that kind of mimics some of the research that you do, and then we're available to kind of coach a kid through that project throughout the year? The website at the bottom, Science Buddies, has activities like that where somebody has presented what they do. You can turn it into a science fair project, but it doesn't have that mentoring capacity. You can also sign up through the Bozeman School District to work with a child in the district and really share an interest with that kid. And then last but not least, there's an event coming up. It's April 13th. Many of you have maybe heard of Nano Days. This is an event where we help people learn about science and engineering at the nanoscale. We basically got permission to add micro days to nano days. There's not that many people at MSU who are doing work at the nanoscale, but there's a lot of people who are doing small scale science. So this year on April 13th, we're doing a public event. It's at the Sub. We have hundreds of people who come. Basically, you would do a booth. You would try to do a hands-on activity or a demonstration and help people understand what you're doing, anything that's basically at small scale science. I know a lot of you are working with microorganisms, so this might be a great opportunity. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up. I do want to make sure that Jamie has some time to tell you about what's happening with NSF. And then if we have a few minutes toward the end, hopefully this got your wheels turning about some new ideas. I'd love to hear if there are any that we missed, and maybe we'll have some time to flesh out some ideas too. Jamie.
I'm Jamie Cornish. I work with Suzi. And in case you didn't spend your Christmas vacation looking at the NSF website, the day after Christmas, NSF released a new grant proposal guide. So I just thought I'd mention that they just keep tightening the screws on broader impacts a little bit. So I thought I'd just tell you guys a few things that they've included. As most of you, I'm sure, know, they have the intellectual merit versus broader impacts. Intellectual merit, potential to advance knowledge, broader impacts, how are you going to benefit society? So that the intellectual merit needs to drive the broader impacts. They need to work together, but your research really does need to drive where you're going to go with the broader impacts. So, sorry, I didn't realize that was so light gray. Hope you can read that. In this new grant proposal guide, they want you to break out. Traditionally, I've seen a lot of us have just stuck in the main body of the project description. We have a little broader impacts paragraph, and we think we're done. It's going to be harder and harder to get away with that. Now, in the project summary, when you're on FastLane, there's going to be 3 boxes: one for your overview, one for intellectual merit, and one for broader impact. So it's going to have to be broken out in the project summary. It has to be broken out in the project description. And this, to me, is a big one: results from prior NSF support. You're going to have to, it's not good enough anymore just to say what research you conducted. You have to report on your broader impacts. Also, as part of that, they want you to include results in a list of up to 5 synergistic activities that demonstrate the broader impact of what you've been doing. They're going to be looking for it a lot more in your budget. There's a much bigger emphasis on organizational support, so you have to get a letter from the university saying that we have the horsepower to do what you're saying you can do. And just across across the whole spectrum of your proposal, they're going to be looking for it broken out. So I just think in the future, you got to, in specificity, it's not good enough to be really general. They want more specificity coming up too. And a lot of the things we talked today are probably more things that fall in the realm of large team grants or would take a lot more money, but a lot of them, you can start getting into immediately. Suzi and I are always available to try to help people brainstorm or to send you to somebody who could help you, hopefully.
We draw a prize winner, Jamie.
Sure.
Did everyone get their name in the bucket? You are late. Don't be shy. Oh wait, who said that? Okay, so a couple more names in the bucket. There's a couple.
Okay, well, while we're doing this, are there any science communications ideas that came to mind for you? Yeah.
3 things.
Okay.
First off, the pen pals, my
Yeah.
kids are involved in that.
Cool.
In 5th grade down at Irving, and they just are so excited.
Awesome.
Super excited about it. They love it. How does that work? They connect, I think, with a grad or an undergrad, and that's a math major. And this is through the math program. And then they just say, I'm studying math, this is the things I'm interested in, and then they talk about math. And they treat math more, instead of the addition and subtraction, nuts and bolts, it's more like a way of life. Guiding their life. It's really social, yeah. And my kid, my 5th grader loves it. And my 6th, 7th grader was fine remembering. That's really good sticking out. Cool. They're on the road between Whitehall and Twin Bridges. There's a paleogeology roadside attraction. It's like a historical marker, but you pull over and it talks about the place. It's awesome.
There's probably a geocache there too. And a Mundi.
But those, it's like historical markers, but they're geology or paleoecology, or it could be ecology or geomorphology. But expansion on those historical markers are
Cool.
exciting. And then to extend on your Minecraft, because Minecraft is such an open world sandbox, it's hard to put rule sets inside of it besides what they already have built in.
Mm-hmm.
But SimCity is a little more detailed, and I think I just remember seeing something about a hydrology unit sub-routine within SimCity.
Yeah.
Because it's more rule-based and like reality-based.
Yeah, that's a great idea. SimCity, does everybody know what SimCity is? You can jump in if I say this incorrectly, but you're building a virtual world, but it's a little more like a real world where if you put all your resources into clean water, you don't have enough money for a fire department. And then people start getting angry because they don't have this or that. So you're kind of like a leader of a virtual village trying to allocate resources.
With the potential rebellion.
Yeah, exactly. Your popularity starts going down, right? So yeah, maybe there is the opportunity to present a challenge like we work on and then have people kind of solve that in the game. Good. Any other ideas? Yeah.
I would also add that we already have a lot of models that predict how ecosystems work. If we could get people who would want to build front ends to those models that would provide the input in a way that's more like a gaming front end to them.
Oh wow, that would be really cool. So
That's another, so the other direction to go, like start with the models we have and rather trying to incorporate those existing platforms, just write the gaming interface to them.
I love it. So bring in the people who are creating games and tie that into what we're doing with climate modeling. That would be really cool.
Or any kind of model.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
I mean, there's hundreds of them, thousands.
And looking forward, virtual reality is becoming really big in technology, and I think that's going to become a great option for people to think about outreach. And then you can do anything in a virtual reality. I think that'll be really helpful.
We'll do a demo of augmented reality iPad games someday. Okay, Sandra.
Just make sure the people, there were a lot of pop-ups on the people who are online, so I just wanted to know if you have, can you tell the questions from online?
Yeah, sure. So
let's see, a couple of them were asking if they can get to the PowerPoint later, and I'm telling them where they can do that. And then, let's see, somebody said that they loved the bus idea, and they also had a secondary teacher who used Google Glass on a dinosaur dig, like using GoPro.
Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah, and then somebody said that graphic wraps for IOE is a great idea.
Okay, good. Can people hear you, or should I repeat those just to make sure it's in the recording?
You can probably repeat it.
I'm going to repeat the part about somebody has worked with a teacher who is using Google Glass on a dinosaur dig and then incorporating also GoPro footage. And then I think somebody was interested in being in the graphic, or interested in the graphic wraps and the signs on the school bus. And nobody yet has volunteered for the Urinal Wrap committee. So I'll find somebody here. No. Yes.
One thing, I volunteer, sure. Yeah, a lot of water. One thing that I was thinking about in the bus tour and roadside geology, I've been chewing the idea of airplane window side geology for a long time for us landscape ecologists.
Wow.
We want to foreshadow.
That would be so cool. So maybe it's in the airline magazine of what you're seeing out the window.
Or podcast.
And then people would fight for certain seats that aren't above the wing, right?
There goes the price on those
They
seats.
would charge more for the seats that have the windowscape geology tour. That's really cool.
You've got to plant crops and giant QR codes.
I like it. You're zapping it from 30,000 feet. Yeah, we didn't even talk about how we can mesh these all together, right? Okay, so quickly, I'm not going to assign anybody to the Urinal Wraps committee, but this is the person who's going to win the communication and outreach. Oh, it's Rob. All right, Rob Maher wins the package. Well, we offered to give away, we called it the Communications and Outreach Package. So you get an infographic, which will be really beautiful, of what you're doing, help writing an online article for the IOE website, and then a consultation if you're working on a grant or anything like that.
I'm delighted I can.
Yeah. And since it's kind of a virtual prize, you get a blinky glass to remind you to come find us, and hopefully you'll bring that to an IOE happy hour.
Sure.
So are there any other ideas that came up that we should add to this list? Tony.
It'd be so cool if we could actually measure pre-post, right? And start looking through all of your ideas and sifting the low apples, right? From the ones that, yeah, I can't wait till my plain side window turns into an F-16 or 22 cockpit with an overlay of Google Earth. But, really, does it make a difference? And let's try to measure those things, right? There are people that are on this campus, that's all they do, is measure pre-post. And how do we bring them into this game?
How do we? Here. I like it. Okay.
Funny.
Yeah, okay.
Following up on that point, I think a really important note to that is to have an objective around your outreach. If you intend, especially if you intend to quantify effectiveness, you have to know what you're trying to quantify. It seems like a lot of this is around just enhancing general scientific awareness, which is great, but thinking about articulating those objectives, I think, is a good place to go.
Yeah. I'm going to say, just to make sure it's on the recording, I'm glad that we're talking about evaluation and objectives, because I did want to be clear again, especially if you came in late. What I'm talking about here is a lot of kind of hooking people in, getting people engaged. Not all of these are measurable, but they could be. I mean, you could take any one of these and apply some of these learning objectives and really think about, what are we going to do to help people understand? How are we going to measure it? I know there are people on campus that can help us with that, so I'm glad we're thinking at that level. That's kind of taking it from, it's more than just, I see this table tent at the restaurant, right? Okay, well, maybe there's a way, a website where you follow the table tent, you go to the website, now you're in some sort of community, now we know who you are, now we start establishing what do we want to do here and how do we measure whether it works. So I appreciate you guys bringing that up. I don't quite know what to do next,
but I think I mean, as far as, you know, adding in this evaluation factor, but we should. Kathy?
It's interesting because next year is the centennial anniversary of the National Park Service. You know, the National Park Service Act was signed in 1916, and so I was talking to the superintendent at Yellowstone, and I said, well, we could be involved, you know, Yellowstone, what's happened over the last 100 years kind of thing. And he said, no, the focus is on how to get millennials to the national parks. So they're looking 100 years into the future, and how do you engage, you know, young people into the parks? And I think there actually would be funding and interest if we had good ideas on, you know, how do you capture the imagination of all these people that are so plugged in and looking for things to do besides the usual.
Yeah, that's a fun question to answer.
That might be a goal or one of the low-hanging fruits, is thinking about how do we help Yellowstone celebrate their centennial.
Yeah, I like it. Are there any ideas that come to mind for you guys? How can we get more millennials into the national parks?
So Kathy, is the assumption that we're not getting, that
Yeah,
they're not
that's
getting
the
them if they look at those
demographic
numbers?
group that they're losing because well, Yellowstone, you know, has terrible cell phone coverage. That's a real impediment for a lot of people somewhere. Yeah, so that's the group they're afraid they're going to lose. So, you know, the future of the national parks, they think, is really in question. It's sad to think about.
Yeah. Any other ideas that you've been thinking about and maybe want to use the power of the group to flesh out? Anything you've been wanting to do, or any new ideas that came to you?
I have just a question about broader impacts. Is it an advocacy arm of NSF, or is it like a scientific dissemination of information? Because I think if we're disseminating information, then I think that's why people are thinking, well, what's the objective beyond dissemination? Like, do you want somebody to change their water use, or do you want, you know, are you trying to change behavior towards sustainability, or are you just like merely telling somebody information? And I think there is like a kind of a fuzzy line around that, and maybe it's also personal perspective or the perspective of the PI as to the extent that they're trying to advocate for a specific outcome. But it seems to me like NSF is really pushing advocacy through broader impacts. And when you think about Yellowstone, and, you know, I don't know what demographics were going to Yellowstone in 1950, and maybe it isn't, maybe the proportion of the population really isn't so different, but maybe it really is so different. And like, what is it's like a sort of an advocacy angle around that, and using science to like get people outdoors, basically. Like, I don't know, I just think it's kind of an interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll give kind of my gut feeling, but then I would appreciate, I know, Kathy, you've gotten a lot of NSF grants. Todd, you're kind of immersed in this world, or anybody else. It's an interesting question, whether it's education versus advocacy. And I also want to make a quick point. Most of the things I've talked about here are not the kind of thing you would put in your broader impacts plan, and that's the end of it. They could lead to something that has more learning objectives, more evaluatable. So I just wanted to make that part clear. I guess my gut feeling is that they want to look at research for research's sake, and when you bring in advocacy, that might be going into uncharted territory. But on the other hand, they want baseline data. You know, if we say we're going to move the needle on this many people who have been exposed to this or are doing this behavior, you got to know where are we now so that we can measure it later. So that's probably not a great answer, but Kathy or Todd, do you guys have thoughts on that?
The lowest hanging fruit for broader impact is the formal education piece that you do as part of a grant. So you're, you know, training graduate students, mentoring postdocs, and providing new curricular materials in your classroom. That's always not very exciting, but it's probably the one that, you know, they're looking for first.
That the students who are part of the project are getting what they need to build their careers.
You're training the next generation of, you know, scientists to do something.
And NSF, through at least programs like the EPSCoR program, they're very interested. The only advocacy I've ever seen them do is they want to get more students into STEM
Mm-hmm.
education. As far as the science, they want to disseminate it objectively. But they make no bones about it. They want more students interested in and taking STEM in like K through 12 as well.
And that is something that you can measure, which is good. Yeah.
I just will throw my 2 cents because I've been thinking a lot about STEM versus STEAM. And 27% of the population, according to the numbers, is scientifically literate, and the vast majority is not scientifically literate. When you think about how, barbers in the 1900s were advertising to an illiterate society, right? They made a poll that said, you really get your hair cut and your blood wax equal. And you didn't have to read, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still the message was disseminated, right? So I think a lot of what you're talking about is communicating to an illiterate society, which is immensely valuable,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can bring them back around.
So you're suggesting that some of these strategies might reach audiences that we wouldn't normally reach because they maybe don't come to the talk at the museum or their kids are not in the science camp, but they might be in some of these other circles. Is that kind of what you were
Right, I
saying?
just think this is an immense value.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay, well, I think we're
Great.
at
Well,
the
thanks,
end.
Susie. I
Yeah.
always learn something.
Thanks for coming.